stuff.
Well, it starts the broadcast, and then I want to, tweet out the link. Some people subscribe to the channel, so they automatically get notified. But okay, here we go. Looks like we're live. Make sure I've got that chat correct.
Check out the flow.
That's going well there, huh?
Yeah, fluff it out a little bit there.
Okay, give me a couple minutes.
Still working on my lighting in here, though.
Once I get this new webcam, everything is lit a little better. I don't have to do the backlight. I had a light behind me kind of shining up. I don't need it anymore.
Better cameras are better. Yeah, I just have what's on my computer here. But someone did buy me a Lume Cube for Christmas because they thought it was way too dark on my post-game videos. So that was some kind of message I wasn't really sure how to take, but hey.
What can you do?
They just want to see your lovely face.
I know, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, I've tweeted that we're live. I got to do a couple more things here. Just do it on Facebook as well because we got to catch all the things here. People getting a little pre-show, which they usually always get here.
Got to own our social media channels.
Mm-hmm. Do our best. And then, hey, people listening to Overtime last week got to hear what, Vigs? They got to hear our new player, didn't they?
Yeah, we're well aware of Colin Schmidt. So I'd heard he had been in school the entire year, and Bob talked about it today. So
yeah, that was a great story
for both on there.
Today.
Yeah. So I don't know why he was taking classes. I think it was because he didn't want to go back out east without hockey and all the COVID stuff had come up.
Yeah.
Because he's a really good student.
Well, what was he? What school was he at?
Union.
Yeah. There you go.
Long ways away from home. And if you're paying your own way, which a lot of kids are in that situation, and there's no guarantee that there's hockey. Someday, Todd, I'm going to do that story on college scholarship money for hockey, because it's not what people think.
Right.
It's nothing close to football, is it?
Well,
no. Well, no. I mean, just in fundamentals, it's not. I mean, in that scholarship does not equal 100% almost ever, right? Have you ever had anyone say that they got actual 100% scholarship money?
Leon Bristett got 100%.
Really? Okay.
It's the only one I've heard of at Minnesota. I think Duluth was pretty close to 100%, and some of those guys they got when they kind of turned the corner. Yeah, and they got like Tufty and there's somebody else they got, and they were pretty aggressive, offering percentages. But I know people are pretty tight-lipped now with all the turnover in the coaches and staff, so it's hard to find that stuff out anymore. But
okay, no one's in the chat yet, but keep an eye on that, would you, Vigs?
I'll do what I can.
All right. Sorry, just more setup these days than it used in the past. Let's get my phone up too so I can look at those questions. Come on. Okay, what's the last thing here? I'm actually going to hit record tonight, Vigs.
Helps, right?
Uh-oh.
Well, it's just I record the video instead of grabbing it off of YouTube later, which I had to do last time. So
there's some familiar people, Brent Taylor in chat now.
Oh yeah, there they are. To record to the cloud. Okay, we are recording. Sweet. I think we are ready to go here. All right. Hold on just 1 second. There we go. All right. Let's start the show. This is the GPL podcast, sponsored by Jerry Peters and First Class Mortgage. Our expertise, your peace of mind. Visit us at firstclassmortgage.com. Now, here's Jupe and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 182. Well, it's Badger Week, and whenever it's Badger Week, we always bring in our favorite Badger reporter, Todd Milewski. Todd, thanks for joining us again.
Hey, I would, at this point, I would probably be offended if I didn't get an invitation on a Badger Gopher Week, right?
Yeah.
No, honestly, no, thanks. So I do appreciate you're reaching out.
I have to check,
this is always fun. I love doing this.
I'd have to check, but I think you're actually moving up the number of times you've been a guest. You're getting, I think Frank Mazzacco's the top, and I could check, but you're getting close to tying him, and so you go twice a year now. So,
hey,
it's a big rivalry.
It is. Any list I can be on with Frank, I'm okay with that. I don't need to be passing Frank, but
I think we're going to need to have like our SNL host type thing, except it'll be guests instead. So you're approaching like the Steve Martin territory.
Yeah,
you know?
The 5-time club. Yeah,
the 5-timers.
5-time club.
Right.
Oh, hey, well, Viggs, how are you doing? You doing good too? You just had a birthday this week, and you got a nice birthday gift, didn't you, Viggs?
I did get a nice birthday gift. I was hoping for a USA Canada game. You know, I wasn't going to get greedy and hope for the US team to win, but it was an amazing performance by them. And congrats on the gold for the boys.
As you can see, if you're watching, I've got the old USA jersey in the corner here in honor of the gold medal. And it was thanks to quite a few Gophers and Badgers. Badgers on the offense, Gophers on the defense, Todd, that mightily contributed to this gold medal. And, I was surprised as well. But in that gold medal game, it seemed like they withstood that first 10 minutes, because that first 10 minutes, they did nothing. And they just kind of, didn't have the crowd against them. And then they finally got into the game and they shut out the Canadians.
Well, that was the thing, right? That Canada had been so strong coming out of the gate in every game they played so far to that point. So what was that push going to be like, knowing that, when you're Canada in a gold medal game of the World Juniors, there's some expectations from an entire country, right? Plus you're in your own country. Granted, yes. There were no fans, but that expectation level has got to be like up here somewhere.
There's some serious pressure on that.
Right. And
young kids.
So if they score early, that turns down a little bit maybe, and they get, they feel a little bit more comfortable. Like this is like every other game they've played so far. But yeah, the US did a good enough job of, just pushing them outside and
hanging on in the beginning.
Yeah. And so, yeah, none of it was pretty, I don't think, but isn't that good enough? Does it matter?
Well, Viggs, they came in, Canada hadn't given up a 5-on-5 goal. They hadn't lost. They hadn't been losing in the entire tournament. Some say maybe their schedule was a little soft. I would disagree. They did shut off the Russians. Didn't they shut out the Russians the night before?
Yeah, but I don't think the Russian team this year was as good as the Russian team usually is. They had some COVID issues with their team selection and things like that. I think what happened to Team Canada is they fell into one of those elite team traps where they're so used to scoring on the rush, they're so used to scoring on the power play, that when you don't get those chances and you have to create in-zone offense, like get your ground game going, and you're up against another elite team, sometimes you just don't have it, especially with like a group like this where they haven't played a lot of games together. That takes a little bit of sequencing, and I just think they couldn't get over that hump. And USA, I thought, did a pretty good job of extinguishing plays and relieving pressure. That Zagros line was fun to watch. I don't think they played hardly any shifts in their own D zone. That's so critical for a team to have success, is to have a line like that. That's your pressure release. Then everybody gets on the same page. And they didn't score pretty goals.
But that's just like, who cares if it's a pretty goal? It's
it's winning hockey.
That's so true. And Todd, like you said, they started slow. But then they got some puck possession, and then they had some puck possession in the Canadian zone, and then they got that goal, and then that was it. It was really a 50-50 game the rest of the game once that happened.
It was those top two lines back to back on that first goal. The line with Caulfield on it kind of set it up, had a good 30-45 seconds in the zone, got off and for the Zegras line. And man, that was one of those where, every time you felt Canada had something coming, it didn't go in, but that one you did feel coming for the US. That is like,
yes,
it was there, and they actually just popped it in. But I mean, 2 games in a row, Alex Turcotte scored the first goal for them, which was, I mean, for a guy that's not, I mean, he had a World Juniors last year, him and Caulfield, that, not very memorable for either one of them. And so for Turcotte to kind of turn that around and score that big of a goal in the gold medal game, I know he's, that's huge for him. I mean, now he goes to LA and tries to make that opening night roster, but what a finish for him to end up with the tournament with 3 goals, but I mean 2 pretty important ones in back-to-back games.
He did get banged up a little bit in the game. He came back out, so that was nice to see as well. But really, Viggs, I guess you could say that the ultimate story was the goaltending by Knight. He had a rough start at the tournament, but ever since that first Russian game, holy cow, was he good.
Yeah, that first night, it seemed like he was trying to do too much, and he was just kind of giving the game away. And I think having a night off to watch and kind of get back in the atmosphere really helped him, and he was lights out when the team needed him. He's a big athletic goalie. I think coming in the tournament, you thought Askarov for Russia and Knight for the U.S. are the 2 top goalies, and they're really going to decide what happens here from that standpoint in terms of who could maybe give Canada a run. And Knight came through for the U.S. It was kind of interesting to see Askarov watch Finland get their medals when he went home empty-handed, because he did not have a good World Junior last year either. So I think for him, that was kind of a tough game to handle, because he didn't have a great team in front of him.
Obviously we've got 1980 gold, Russians, communists, blah, blah, blah. But boy, I think it's a lot funner these days to beat the Canadians, Todd. It's just, it's fun.
It was going through my head during that game that, I think a lot of people thought that was Canada's game to lose, that the way they had set everything up, they hadn't shown a lot of weakness, especially, I mean, maybe in a couple of games where it was out of hand and they could afford it. But then the U.S. scores, and it's like, Drago's cut. And that's what popped into my head, is like, oh, well, we haven't seen this. So let's see where this goes. And we saw where it went. But those U.S. and Canada games, I mean, that tournament is, I mean, you can pick your game, pick your matchup, and it's like there's something exciting about almost all of them now, which is pretty cool. That, and especially this year where there's no other hockey going on those couple of days, the college, there was some stuff going on around it, but man, that you're never let's hope we don't ever get anything like that again, where the NHL isn't playing during that time and we've got no fans in the crowd. But man, it's never going to be like that again. So I mean, to have the U.S. win it in those circumstances too, when everyone's watching, pretty good.
I think it would be kind of cool for the NHL to recognize how big these games are and put that semifinal and gold medal night as nights where the NHL's off. So they can really focus on the next wave of talent coming through. Because when I think of the USA-Canada matchups, just think of how many draft picks now are playing on both sides of the ice. It used to be, Canada would have all the talent and high-end picks. Now the U.S. has almost as many picks as Canada, and it's a real fun event to watch for that. It kind of reminded me of some of those North Dakota Gopher games where, you've got 5 or 6 first round picks against 5 or 6, first round picks, and they're at Excel, and it's a big stage, and it just gets you excited for the game to see that talent play against each other.
Well, it's nothing but fun. It's just good, fun hockey. And, I don't have the NHL Network anymore, but I did find a couple nice feeds on YouTube that allowed me to watch the final game. So
that's something we got to get fixed, by the way. Even like I do have NHL Network on my cable package, but I can't watch it on my computer. I can't be out of the house watching on my phone. So, come on, MLB Network does such a good job with things, and they're in the same building as NHL Network. They're run by the same people. Let's get this together and get it figured out and get all of that.
Well, let's talk about that TV. We obviously heard the Fox Sports North and Wisconsin, kind of the big regional networks, announced their plans for games. Gophers are going to get 10 games, and obviously Wisconsin's part of that, and you've kind of got your own package as well. But the big thing around here, Todd, is that everyone's losing FSN. We don't get FSN anymore. Dish Network dropped them. People who were streaming on YouTube, streaming on Hulu, dropped there. Now everyone's like, we want the games on the Big Ten Network. All the games on the Big Ten Network. Whereas before, it's no, let's get it back on FSN. And it's just this back and forth. And Viggs, I see you smiling because it's just, the people are getting exactly what they wanted. They're getting a lot of FSN games, and boy, because FSN is now under new ownership, they've lost quite a few carriage deals.
Right. This is almost what the fans have asked for, is get all the games on FSN. And I think part of that loyalty is why Sinclair maybe overpaid for the package. And now they're in this position where they got to come up with the money in probably the hardest economy to come up for money in this day and age, because we don't know what sports are going to look like. They have all the cancellations, the shortened seasons. It's probably pretty frustrating for them, but this is the hand that's been dealt. And if you're a fan, you got to figure out a way to watch it. I know we've had people who've been telling us that you can log into some of the Fox Sports apps and use your Hulu or YouTube credentials to get into that system to maybe stream the games. You can get into the Big Ten Plus and stream the games, but it's getting more and more complicated for smaller sports to figure this out. I don't think Big Ten hockey is ever going to be a ratings driver at this point for hockey. Wrestling and gymnastics and volleyball sometimes compete just as well at the ratings for Big Ten hockey. Yeah. So it's a difficult situation, I think, for everybody. And, I think we're hearing it because Minnesota hasn't lost a game yet.
And is your Fox Sports Wisconsin one of those networks that may get some kind of Bally's name or some kind of gambling name? We're hearing that this spring that some of these networks, these regional networks, are going casino on us.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything specific about Wisconsin on that one, but if it's all the same package, you have to imagine there's some kind of, they would want it to be consistently marketed, right? Where it's, for the same reason why it's Fox Sports this, Fox Sports that, even though I know there are a few different ones in that family that are named somewhat differently. I don't exactly remember which ones are owned by which companies anymore, but I feel like that, Wisconsin has, there's been, interest in sports gambling here, but the government officials have shut that down pretty quickly. So I don't know if they see
similar to here.
I don't know if they see an outlet for legal sports gambling here, but maybe that's not even the point anymore. It's just the, promoting the idea of that there's sports gambling going on somewhere, and you can probably make it work if you make a run over the border to Iowa here. You can get there in an hour and a half, 2 hours, and throw everything down at the sports book there that just opened over the border. And I wish I knew what the strategy was there, but behind the naming, but there have been worse things named around the country lately, probably than after sports betting.
I don't really know what to think anymore with those Veeks. I mean, I'm guessing schools like the University of Minnesota is not high on having their games, well, hockey games on Bally Sports Network.
I think right now athletic departments are trying to figure out how to rub two pennies together and figure out their budget. We're seeing that right now at the University of Minnesota. They're going to start allowing some alcohol sponsorships. How much they go to Anheuser-Busch and how much they go to, local Surly and Summit for advertising revenue and partnerships, but they're looking for it. Even if it's going to be, $300,000, $400,000 a year, they're trying to figure out ways to solve their budget holes because they can't go in the red. They're either going to have to take loans out to balance their budgets or do furloughs. And so they're just doing what they can to get their TV contracts fulfilled and keep the lights on.
Oh, yeah, keeping the lights on. Well, we need to recap a little bit what happened this past weekend, Vigs, or past week. Let's just say the most recent two games, since we even heard some of the news conference today. The Saturday game we did this, and Jess Myers is like, wasn't that the Monday game? We're all accustomed to it, so we understand it. But Minnesota, they did keep their undefeated streak going, Vigs. That's good. They faced a lot more adversity, gave up the first goal, gave up their first lead, gave up their first a couple power play goals this weekend, and actually were losing in both games. I think I think there was actually a lot of good with this weekend because they did face some of that adversity that we hadn't really seen yet. Yeah,
it was a weekend where, they're still trying to figure things out. Despite the record, this team does have some holes to it. They've been pretty fortunate, I think, with the amazing goaltending they've gotten from LaFontaine. Their power play has produced very well. Their penalty kill has been really difficult to score against. And then this past weekend, we saw some of the holes show up during the game where they got scored on. And I think sometimes when you're dealing with college kids, until you can show them that what they're doing is wrong and it results in a goal against or some, grade A chances against, it's hard to get through to them that what they need to do is important. So I think it's important for this team to go through that step of seeing some failure and how to correct it and why what they do is important. And I also think it was a good weekend because I think Coach Motzko got a hold of Bryce Brodzinski a little bit and got his attention by putting him on the fourth line in the first game and then as the extra skater in the next. And he answered the bell a little bit. He looked a little bit more engaged, maybe found some magic playing with Ben Myers and Blake McLaughlin, and maybe got McLaughlin going a little bit too. I mean, I'd love to play with Ben Myers. He's a pretty easy guy to play with. So maybe that's the answer there. And then when you've got the Ranta Reedy line going like they are, you could probably put anybody with them and they'd be okay. So maybe the team is starting to figure some pieces out.
Well, one thing we did see, Vigs, is Minnesota got lacrosse gold, or Michigan again. I would say this was much more difficult goal, much more pretty goal than that original one. The original Michigan one, though, was pressure situation was way higher. But boy, Johnny Walker from Arizona State, the puck bounces off the back of the back of the goal, back of the backboards, comes out, bounces right to him. He just smoothly just picks it right up. Boom. I don't know. We're not going to see a better goal in college hockey this year.
I'm a little bit on the flip side. I think Johnny Walker maybe lucked out with how the puck was bouncing. And then as it was on his stick, like laying flat, he's like, oh, I'm just going to lacrosse it. I don't know if he's got a lacrosse background or anything like that, but it almost looked like he's just like, oh, well, of course I'm going to do this. He's like, that's the best way to score.
Oh, yeah. There's obviously luck there. I mean, there's luck in all of that, the timing, where you are, things like that. Mm-hmm. But and yes, when he did put his stick on it, the puck was already flat. He didn't have to pick it up. He didn't have to do it.
It was just balancing it just right, And
he was able to do it with the one motion too. Where Mike Legg had to do it, and Svechnikov, they have to do the dip down, and so you know what's happening at that point, right? You don't necessarily know what Walker was doing when he gets the puck.
It happened so fast
around the boards, and it just came around.
It was so fast.
And that's why I think Mo, kind of give him the benefit of the doubt here. Like, you just don't see that coming that quickly. Usually if there's a pause behind the net, they can maybe catch it and figure out what's going on. But he took it the right way after the game when he got it brought up. He's like, it'd be real easy to be thinking about that the entire rest of the game, but you just have to let it go and enjoy the moment and focus on the next shot. He's got pretty good attitude. He got hung out to dry a little bit for his first start. You look at some of the goals, like they just left guys right in the heart of the slot, totally uncovered for 2 of the goals. Then they had the wraparound. That last one, he lost a little bit in a struggle, but he did okay for not seeing any action.
And Todd, Mr. Doogie got us again. And he was the kind of part of that rally, standing right out in front, nobody there. He's going to bury it against Minnesota because he always does.
That and the king of the crazy bounces, Sean Doogie, strikes again, right? The puck finds him when it's bouncing weird. I don't know how that goes for him, but yeah, that's a interesting story, the way that all turned out for him and how he ended up in Arizona this year. But I know that there were some ruffled feathers towards the end of last season with the Badgers and him. So if he gets a spot to play and play every night and play on a top line in Arizona, can play golf all year round.
Yeah.
Are you gonna argue with him? Are you gonna blame him? And now he can get another year out of it too because of the way everything turned out.
He better get another year. Spending basically your entire hockey season on the road when you expected to be playing golf and hanging out on the ASU campus as a young athlete. He better take advantage of that next year.
Yeah, I would think so.
That would make him 6 years, wouldn't it? Wow.
I don't think he's got the NHL size.
Did he play full 4 years at Wisconsin?
No, he only played 3.
Okay, 5 years.
5 years.
That's still a lot. Oh. And Todd Viggs and I have been talking about, whenever Minnesota has to go down and visit, we're doing like a podcast from Phoenix. We're just going to go down there and have some
have to do it up. Yeah.
You have to.
And you don't want to be the one the series that ends up in October either. I mean, you kind of need it to be a January, February series.
Yeah, it could be cold here in October, though. I love
Minnesota. True, but
this part of the country, October is just the best. As long as we don't get snow, I love October.
My golf game might still be sharp in October. We'll see.
There you go. Oh, boy. What can we do? Well, one thing we need to do is we need to hear from our sponsor.
Hey, fellow GPLers, this is Jerry Peters from First Class Mortgage. Interest rates are near all-time lows and property values are on the rise. Lower your interest rate and remove monthly PMI at the same time to save thousands of dollars. Or use the equity in your home for debt consolidation and home improvement. The housing market is still hot, so make sure you're prepared by getting a pre-approval letter from me before you start shopping. Mention you heard about me on the GPL podcast and receive a $300 closing cost credit. Some restrictions do apply. Call me today at 612-940-3291 or visit firstclassmortgage.com to fill out a free online application. My NMLS number is 480200. First Class Mortgages is 322842. This is not an offer to lock into an interest rate agreement under Minnesota law. First Class Mortgage is an equal housing lender.
All right. Of course, we thank Jerry for sponsoring the podcast. I'm looking through the questions, and I think someone's giving you a hard time here, Todd. Big Bucks guy. When will Todd start covering a real team?
I was going to reply to that with the Sopranos. Oh, but I decided to pass on it.
What do you mean cover a real team?
What can I do?
You're covering a team. That's what you do. You cover them what they're good, they're bad, they're evil or great. Whatever.
Bob thinks this is a good team you're covering this year. Wisconsin's dangerous this year.
They're not,
in second place.
They're not bad. I mean, they You compared last year to this year, and last year has the show, right? You've got Turcotte, Caulfield, Holloway, Miller, Kalnug on the rise. And you think, well, this is the team that's got to do something finally for the Badgers. And obviously it didn't end up that way. And then you're thinking, well, these guys are gone and what's left? Well, what's left is a more balanced team that knows how to, and a little bit older, that knows it has to work a little bit harder for what it wants. And I think they took that to heart over the offseason, whatever the offseason was for a lot of those guys, because it's weird for everyone. But there's a little bit more grit in the game from them this year than last year when it was the Flash. So that's not saying they don't have talent. I mean, you put Caulfield and Holloway out there. And Sam Stang is a really good young guy. He's going to be good in a few years. And the depth that they have, the older guys that they can put out there, it's a pretty good group. I mean, what I wanted to see at the start of the season to know whether they're going to have a chance is if they had better goaltending. Because, I mean, let's face it, that has been a sore spot for years with the Badgers, which is hard to understand because it had been a bright spot for so many years before that.
Decades.
Sure. Right.
Decades.
And they just hadn't found the right pieces to be. I don't even want to say they needed someone to be a superstar in goal. They needed someone to have a 900 save percentage and just get over that. And they hadn't been able to do that in 4 and 5 years now. So that was the big question I had. I think a lot of people had was, could they at least get that level of goaltending? And so far they have. So does it continue? We've seen it before where they have a good first half and then fall off the deep end second half. So who knows where it goes from here? But yeah, they're a team that's going to be in the mix as we start the second half here. And who knows how long it goes, but I feel like the way the Big Ten is that everyone's going to beat each other up again as usual. And this may end up being like one of those years, depending on where the Gophers go from here, like Notre Dame's first year in the Big Ten, where one team separates itself out and everyone else is fighting for those next six spots.
Viggs and I were actually talking at the beginning of last year how we actually were we thought the Badgers would kind of be a lot better than they thought. Obviously it didn't happen that way, but they also, they started much earlier last year. They had that that international or some kind of tournament, didn't they have?
Right,
where they got to play. They played way early. So they kind of got a team going long before anyone else. And we were kind of both surprised at what happened, after that, because, they had that extra time to gel that all the other schools didn't get.
I felt like they got off to a pretty good start last year, but as the season wore on, you just saw so many mistakes and players who were not invested. Coaches talk a lot, win faceoffs, block shots, play physical, be difficult to play against, don't commit turnovers at the blue lines. And when you watch Wisconsin that second half last year, you didn't see a lot of that. They just didn't seem engaged in playing winning hockey. They were out there looking to, develop their skills and be ready to sign pro contracts and looking ahead rather than embracing the game right now. And I think that's one of the things at Minnesota that's flipped, where a couple of years ago we saw Minnesota on the other end of that, where players were not engaged in doing the things that it takes to play winning hockey. The players were developing, they were scoring points, they were going on to play pro hockey, but they weren't successful to get over the hump. And you just got to have that right mix of talent and grit to be a good hockey team in college hockey. And I think having those older players who've been through it, it can sink in a little bit more, and they can be the vocal players on your team that get everybody to elevate that part of their game.
Todd, do you think that that could have been some of the issues with Sean Doogie? He's one of those guys. It's like And obviously, he's a team guy, and maybe he wasn't seeing that by a lot of the youngsters last year.
I think there was a couple of issues there. While it's never been told to me this way directly, I've heard kind of through some different channels that there was a blowing up in the last series of the regular season at Ohio State between Doogie and the coaching staff in the locker room. And it got to be where I don't think anyone thought it was a tenable situation after that. And because he was coming back from an injury, and he was supposed to be able to play that weekend. And Tony Grano told me that week before that weekend, yeah, he's going to play. We need him in the lineup. Well, they were on a little bit of a mini roll. They had just swept Arizona State, I think, at home. They went in there and I think they won the first night. And so they wanted to keep what they had going into the playoffs. And so they didn't put Doogie into the lineup. And well, that obviously doesn't feel good when you're a junior and your coach tells you, yeah, you're going to play. And then no, you don't end up going in. So there was that dynamic to it. And yeah, I mean, I do think there were guys that didn't have that team mentality. I don't know if he was one of them, because he was the first to point fingers at himself when there was a problem. So I at least with us in the media. And so I didn't see that directly out of him. But you never know what things are going on inside the room, or when guys are just, 3 or 4 of them are together and talking about other guys. There could have been something there. I don't know that for sure, but yeah, there were guys that did not buy into it, the team concept, like Viggs was talking about, being different now for the Gophers, that hard to win like that over a 6-month season. You can win like that in stretches where you just have talent and you beat another team, but to do that consistently and to keep that going over a long stretch, that's tough.
And I think too, sometimes players and coaches get in this point where there's different rules for different players, or there are different expectations for other players. So you can see a kid who's a first or second round draft pick maybe get a little more slack than somebody else, or, keep getting power play time when maybe they're not producing and the other players are thinking that should be my spot. He's not getting it done. Why does he get this much slack and I don't get any? You get these conflicts that come up, and it can be a wedge, especially if, you're going up and down on a roller coaster season, and that makes it difficult.
It does indeed. But one thing, as a fan, we always want the Badgers to stink.
To an extent,
but that's just it, to an extent, because when all of us think of the big picture, we need the Gophers to be good. We need the Badgers to be good.
Yes.
We need Michigan to be good in the Big Ten. We need those 3 traditional teams to be good in the Big Ten, for the Big Ten to start getting some gravitas, because, that's one of the things. Oh, the Big Ten, they still stink. They don't, but we kind of need one of those powerful Michigan teams, Minnesota teams, Wisconsin teams again, to bring some of that gravitas back.
I think we see in a lot of areas of our society today that false narratives take hold, and they are incredibly difficult to shake. That's all I'm going to say in that direction. But I'm spinning that in that for years, since 2013, people have wanted to take shots at the Big Ten, right? Because, what have you guys done? Where are your national championships? What's, you're getting one team in the tournament, what compared to the big projections, where is it? And especially when you have the NCHC going gangbusters on the other side. I feel like it's been tough for the Big Ten to shake that. I feel like they're starting to turn a little bit. Now, is it going to reach the common fan who only knew, from Wisconsin, only knew North Dakota and Denver as rivals, and don't see Michigan State and Penn State as rivals in hockey. I don't know. I feel like there's always going to be some animosity left over. But the farther away we get from it, the next generation will come and only know Big Ten hockey. I mean, we're already getting guys playing Big Ten hockey who are pretty close to only having that like for half of their life.
Yes.
It's getting kind of scary, but yeah, well, we'll see in a few more years.
Well, we saw a fake Don Lucia tweet the other night, Viggs, players on the U.S. gold team, what the Big Ten had was 11. NCHC had like 3 or something. I don't know if those are the exact numbers, but something along those lines. And of course, we love fake Don just getting everyone going.
Well, I mean, it's true, though. I think in college hockey, when you have a coaching change, it takes a while maybe for most coaches to find their footing and get their teams put together and figure out how to construct their roster. And maybe we're seeing that. I was wondering what Granato was doing with the Badgers with his 40, 50 commits in the pipeline and then trying to figure out how to get his roster together. Because I think when you have all that turnover and you have kids coming in and leaving and you don't have a structure for them to come into, you're left, treading water every year, trying to figure it out before you can go anywhere. And so I think the coaches that transition, it takes a while. I think Moscow had a really good idea of what he wanted to do, and he went through some lumps to make it happen, but now he's seen some of the results. I think Mel Pearson at Michigan, he went through some lumps trying to figure out what he had. And, Dan Cole, he's figuring out, how do I be successful at Michigan State? It's not like the rest of the schools in the conference. They have some history, but no one who's playing hockey today knows what that history is. And then you got Penn State. They kind of play a different style, and Guy Gadowski's like the villain out there. You got Rolick doing his own thing. It's an interesting conference, and it takes time for everyone to find where it's going. Jeff Jackson, Notre Dame, what you're going to get there. He's been pretty consistent year to year. So the programs are there. The finances are there. All these teams have very big budgets to support what they want to do. It's eventually going to start heading the right direction, but I'm glad that Granato maybe has some things figured out now with his roster construction to have a great series against Minnesota.
Well, you mentioned Guy Gadowski there about being the bad guy, and he kind of gives everyone that vibe, Todd. But what we learned this week, Todd, was he hasn't seen his family in months, and that's tough on anybody. But he's got a wife that's a little more sensitive to. Or could be more sensitive to COVID. So he's like, I'm not even going to come home. And that's quite the sacrifice he's making. And we get kind of blinded by some of this sometimes where we see games happening and we start to feel like, okay, well, there's a little bit of normalcy going on here, even though coaches, everyone's got masks on behind the bench and everything. And then something like that you hear and it's like, oh, wow. Well, no, we're pretty freaking far from normal. So yeah, that was an interesting thing to read about that. Really kind of brought home how far away we are from getting from this being a normal season or a regular season when we can't even just have the normal relationships in person that in a family that we would normally have. And so, yeah, that was eye-opening. And we've talked among other people that, we miss just being at the rink with people we know and seeing that every day or every week, or like with you guys, when I would come up there, just hanging out for a while. But I mean, it's stuff like that. That's like, whoa, that's on a different level than our smaller concerns like that. And I know, Todd, you've been covering a lot of the WCHA for the women, and boy, both the Badgers and Gophers have had so many games rescheduled and canceled due to COVID on other teams and, their own teams as well. it's really affecting the women's game quite a bit more than the men's Big Ten for now.
Yeah. So to put it in some perspective, the Badgers women's team hasn't played a home game yet. Their first one is tomorrow, Friday afternoon.
Whew.
They play Ohio State Friday and Saturday. They play the Gophers here, I believe, next Friday and Saturday, if I'm remembering it right. And that's 2 of the 3 home series they'll play all season in a span of 9 days or whatever it is. And it, for a team, and this is a team that generates so much from its home crowd. I mean, if you're ever at a game at LeBron Arena, a women's game, and it's, especially when a game's against the Gophers or Duluth sometimes, you get some energy in there. You get a couple visiting fans and it gets going a little bit. That's what college hockey is, that buzz in the building. Obviously we don't have that anywhere this year, but to only be able to play 6 home games, and I mean, there maybe a 7th if there's an NCAA regional and we get to that point and they're hosting it, that's got to be just a tough way to go through a season after you already just had your season, the end of your season, the best part of your season pulled out from you, 9-10 months ago. But I credit to them for trying to put on a season, because I mean, you could go around every corner and say, man, forget it. I mean, there's a reason here to say, let's just shut it down and come back next year. But they wanted to give it a go. They feel like they can do it. So they're making the effort. And so I've heard from both sides saying, why are they doing this? They're not making money. They don't get TV revenue. Why are they bothering? But I don't feel like, if there's any way of doing it, people should try. Yes. That's where I've landed on my own thoughts about it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And you circle the wagons, but give it a go.
Well, you speak about LeBron, and that's where the men's team has moved this year. And the rink is 91 feet, 3 inches wide.
Correct. That's we were the long held belief, and it's in the notes, is that it's 200 by 90. And I wrote that at one point, and then I was corrected by the rink manager at LeBron and the Kohl Center, who said, no, it's 91 feet, 3 inches. So just, hey, all right.
Do we know if that was a mistake? Do we know if that was a mistake when they laid it out? Maybe you didn't have a Madison graduate doing it. Maybe.
All right now. No, I think it just ended up being one of those things that was kind of passed down, and someone told the coach, yeah, it's 90 feet. And so that's how it was used in the first couple of years. And no one ever bothered to maybe even measure it after it was done, or
it's kind of like one of those IKEA furniture things. You're like, what's this screw and board for? No idea. Good. Just flood it.
Yeah. And so,
have you been covering games at the LeBron?
Yeah. The men's team has played, I want to say 6 home games so far. And so, yeah, I've been there for those, but it's weird.
I must say both women's teams for both schools have spectacular arenas, perfect for that hockey. I still think Ritter is one of the best arenas to watch a game, especially if you can get up in the press area in Ritter. A lot of times some of those suites are open there, and sometimes you can kind of sit in one of those suites even and report from there. You're overhanging the ice. You're such a great view. I'm guessing LeBron is not a lot different.
It's not. It's got a pretty similar design without the suites and with only 3 sides, because the one goal side is there. It just is a wall like old Mariucci, where it kind of cuts down a little bit even into the wall to be able to fit it in there. But I do wish LeBron could have been a little bit bigger seating wise, because they have no shot at ever having a Frozen Four there.
What does it seat?
$22.73 is the number that they will
I think,
sell out at, and the NCAA wants 3,500, I believe.
and I think Ritter's like 38.
Yeah,
Close.
but and Ritter also has, you know, the amenities there. They have the suites. They have the club room up there. That
Yeah, they do, and
they can use for all
they
those.
they can connect to Mariucci even for extra locker rooms if they need to. So
Which they can do here at the Kohl Center too, because it's all connected. But
Okay.
which actually comes into play this weekend because, and I'll get into this in a minute, because there's only one full team locker room in Laban, and so, which has never been a problem before, because not talking about the Badgers locker rooms, visiting team locker room. There's one there, and then there's one that they can use for high school teams. That's the separate one, doesn't have all the stalls and showers and whatnot. But so never a problem, because men don't play there. Women are the only team that have visitors in there. Well, that's not the case this year. And so this weekend, there's a women's series Friday, Saturday. There's a men's series Saturday, Sunday. You've got a crossover.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to write about this. I think it's going to run next week, about the logistics of all of this. But the Gophers are practicing here tomorrow. They have a locker room in the Kohl Center. So they have to go from the Kohl Center through the tunnel, which runs right past the Badgers, where the Badgers come in and out. So this is part of the problem of having that locker room, is you'll have teams coming together and get on the Laban from there. During the game on Saturday, they will dress for warm-ups in the Kohl Center locker room, come onto the ice. Then after they've sanitized the Laban locker room from the Ohio State people having left, they will move everything from the Kohl Center locker room to the Laban locker room. So either after the warm-up and before the game, or after the first period, they will go into the Laban locker room. And it's
what in the world?
The pieces here are kind of staggering to think about.
You know, I would say, well, I guess the period breaks are shorter now. Just let them keep that. Just stay in the other locker room.
That's the thing.
Because you know what they do. I'm guessing it's not a much bigger walk than it is now. Because, you know, like when the Gophers practice at Ritter, they just dress in their locker room and they just walk right over, don't they, Viggs?
It's probably the same distance. Yeah.
I've had some uncomfortable walks with Don Lucia from practice at Ritter back to Mariucci for a press interview, especially when we have to wait a little bit for everybody to get there or something like that.
Don made it uncomfortable for you?
It could be awkward. He warmed it up to me at the end, but there were a couple walks that were a little uncomfortable.
I only had the one weird, awkward time with Don. And that was when he was just replaced by Mr. Motzko. And I'm there with Craig Floor, about to go up the elevator in TCF Bank Stadium for the announcement of Motzko. Lucia comes over to go up in the elevator with me and Craig Floor. And he's talking about him. When do I need to hand over my keys to my office? And it was just like, it was just so weird to be standing there. But I was. And it was a weird lock. It was a weird ride up the elevator too, because it's like, yeah, you're the outgoing guy, and you were literally just talking to Craig Floor about giving your keys for your office. Back to Craig.
I almost wonder though, did he have a little grin on his face? Like he's like, yeah, it's okay to hand over the keys. I'm ready to go to Italy with my wife and do wine tasting and hang out with the grandkids. You know, I think Don was ready.
Okay, guys, let's talk about this weekend. Gophers coming in 10-0. Badgers coming in around 500, at least in the league, Todd, with all the 5-0, 5-2, all these
5
shootout loss,
1-0. I don't know what the
9-0-2-1-0
code is.
exactly.
I think it's kind of thing that I have to get off of my phone and enter into these websites when I log in sometimes.
Viggs, this team has obviously been playing well. They played this past weekend. Wisconsin hasn't played in a while. Minnesota needs to take advantage of that, Viggs.
Yeah, I think so. I think Minnesota has a couple lines going really well right now, and they're going in a way that I don't think they need to score on the rush or the power play to be successful. I think they're going to generate pressure in the zone. I think Reedy and Ranta are playing maybe as best as any pair I've seen for Minnesota in a couple of years. I mean, I can't really think back and have a pair come up that's playing as well as they are right now. And they just dominate possession. They get pucks to the net and they're always dangerous. And I think the Badger D will have their hands full with those two. And if McLaughlin can get going here, playing with Ben Myers, that could be a dangerous group. So I think Minnesota is on the up and up, getting their defenseman back. I think this weekend you won't see a drop off from those guys. They're still going to have the adrenaline pumping, especially having teammates on the other team that are now opponents. They'll be ready to go. And I think Minnesota is probably going to come out with 2 wins here. Jack will probably see both games. He's been playing outstanding. Even when he's had time off, he's been sharp the next time out. So I think it'll be entertaining hockey, though. I'm really interested to see if Caulfield's play carries over, because I felt at times last year it didn't. He had so much talent, and he was really good on the power play, and he was really good when he had space. But I thought he had trouble a lot of time last year in the Big Ten. So I'm interested to see how he plays in this game.
Todd, when is the last time the Badgers officially played?
December 4th, and I'll give you this. I had looked it up earlier today. This is the longest stretch without a game when you include exhibition games, because a lot of times they would play, the under 18 or the U18s or someone over the break. The longest stretch without a game in mid-season since 1930 something.
And all because your Michigan State series was nixed right at the end there.
Right. They were supposed to play Tuesday, Wednesday. I think the same nights the Gophers were playing Michigan.
Correct.
Remembering it right. Yeah. And then that got postponed because of COVID tests on the Badger side. So yeah, they had to bus home and 2 buses, and whoever was positive had to go home in a car service. And it was
that's not good.
Yeah. It's the way it works though. So
do you get a bad Uber rating when you,
I would imagine that having COVID probably decreases your stars there.
Yeah. Well, what are you expecting then, Todd?
I was going back today because I was trying to write my preview, and I was like, when's the last time I saw this team? And what do I remember about it? And because they played on the road and I wasn't at that series at Ohio State, it feels like forever since I've seen them. And what they left with was they got swept by Arizona State here before they went and played Ohio State and split there. But those 4 games, they were without 4 forwards who were out with COVID protocol and Dylan Holloway. So 5 forwards down, including 3 your top 3 centers, maybe not top 3 centers, but 3 of your top 4 centers. So it was a skeleton crew those couple weeks. And that first weekend against Arizona State, they were just they hadn't figured it out at that point. And so I don't, as much as that's going to cost them in the end, I feel like in how you're comparing teams this year, I don't feel like that was a great judge of the Badgers just because of what they didn't have.
Definitely not.
So I go back to like, okay, what am I going to see here this weekend? Well, I feel like, if Caulfield and Holloway come back and are at, their normal levels, this is the first time they'll be back at full strength as a team or full roster since that first series they played at Notre Dame, which they looked really good in that series. They swept both games, or they won both games. So I feel like they will have a chance to do something this weekend. I just don't know. I'm having watched the Gophers this last couple of games. It just seems like a team that's got the swagger back, and it has the, if something goes wrong, we'll fix it. And that to me is where you get a team that ends up being a regular season champion and can go over the long haul when you can, figure out what's going wrong in the moment and fix it, because a lot of teams have to do that the next day and fix it, and they can't adjust in the moment. I feel like I've seen that from this group, that, we can recognize what's wrong. We're not going to panic. Just go out and have a better shift the next time. So I don't like picking sweeps, because I think it's really hard to sweep, but I would not be surprised seeing the Gophers sweep here and keep that roll going.
And Viggs, boy, if they sweep, they're way ahead in the Big Ten standings. It could be not technically over, but they would have a large lead, Viggs.
It'd be a large lead. They still have a lot of things to work on, though. I mean, this is not a perfect team. I do agree with Todd, though. This is a team that when they have had things go wrong or whatever, they've been pretty good at showing some resiliency, and they've talked about it. On the bench, people are more vocal. They're more comfortable getting everybody back in line to play what you have to do to have winning hockey, and they play percentage hockey. This isn't a team that turns a lot of pucks over for long stretches of time. This is a team that doesn't come out and have a bad 10 minutes. So I think it's shaping up to be a good second half here. And I think this would be a good measuring stick for Minnesota. It's hard to know what to make of the first half, and it's hard to know what to make of the Gophers against ASU and what that means. So I think there's a lot of things still to be decided here, and it'll be interesting to see this next stretch of games, what's happening in the conference.
Well, it's hard to know what to make of this season in general, though. Right? How do you look at how do you connect one weekend to the next or one series to the next? Just not knowing, are you going to have the same team this game to this game? Are you going to have to shut it down and be out for 3 weeks and then have to try and pick it up again? Those are the things that I would think would scare the heck out of coaches, not knowing, what that's going to look like.
And I think that's why Minnesota added Colin Schmidt. They're just like, hey, he's on campus. He's going to school here. He's a local kid. Let's get him on the roster, see what happens. That's why you have all the defensemen that they have.
There's a ton of teams that have added someone, either be it from, Anchorage or Union RPI, teams that aren't playing this year, or from a kid that's would have been coming in a future year. Out of juniors, because this year won't count against them. It's kind of a free year. So I'm surprised maybe a little bit that more teams didn't do that, to try and you don't want a kid to come in and not do anything and just sit out in case you need a body at some point. Mm-hmm. But it's nice to have that insurance policy too.
Todd, what are you working on for this weekend series with the Wisconsin State Journal?
Well, the lead quote from the story I'm working on will be for Saturday's paper, so it should be up on the site sometime tomorrow. Is a Badgers player saying, "But they haven't played us yet." About the Gophers. So
billboard material.
Hold it up a little bit there.
I like that. I like that. I like kids, I like kids, even that thing, say, bring it on. I love that attitude.
And that came out of, I was talking about how I had seen in our Zoom with the player that, I'd seen this swagger back out of Minnesota, and it's, something that I remember seeing out of, guys like Crowley and Bonin. And I mean, those guys back in that era, that is just like,
you just said my boy's name. Crowley's my all-time favorite player.
That you knew that, you went in the Mariucci and you probably weren't going to win because just of the way they were acting. I mean, that they knew that they were really good, and they could, almost put out a B effort and still beat you. And at least that's a lot of the Minnesota-Wisconsin games that I saw in my youth anyway. Not to say that the Crowley era was my youth. That was my, middle, era.
Crowley went to my high school, and he was after me. I think I was a senior when he might've been a freshman or something like that. So, but still, I thought he was magic at Minnesota. He's 1 point from the defenseman record in points at Minnesota, and he played 3 seasons. And Richards, who has the record, played 4. I will always have him as my all-time favorite player, and it'll be tough for someone to beat that.
Yes, but so I was bringing up that swagger, and
Okay.
the players that I was talking to were kind of saying, talking about, yeah, we're all right. We think we can play with them. So they do have that kind of. They're trying to come with that same kind of attitude to it, which I think is a great way for the series to go in on both sides.
I love that. I just love that. It's just great. Well, I'm picking sweep. I mean, of course I'm picking sweep, right, Vigs? I've picked sweep all year and I've been doing pretty well. So I got to keep it going. You can't go wrong. And if they don't, hey, they don't. Because Moscow said it today, Vigs. We're going to get punched in the face. It's going to happen. It could happen at any time. They got a little punch in the face by Arizona State. The Badgers could easily do it this weekend, Vigs.
I think if Minnesota has a game like they played in the second night against ASU this weekend against Wisconsin, Bucky's going to get OW. Mm-hmm. You can't play that way against a team like Wisconsin. There's just too much talent on that team. And if they get a lead and would stretch it out, I think it would be tough.
I do have to throw this one in there. I looked it up. The last time the Gophers were number 1 coming here, the Badgers were also number 12, same as the rankings they are now. Badgers won a couple of 2-1 games. So
bring it.
History, I don't know what it means, but those are the kind of things I love looking up.
We need some more rivalry. We need to kind of amp this up a bit.
This would have been a great year for that. They were talking about, having the local or the closer teams play 6 or 8 times. This would have been a great year for that, wouldn't it?
Oh, I can't disagree with you there.
Would have been nice.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us, Todd. It's always great to have you on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm glad you guys invited me. I will do this anytime.
And we'll definitely have you back for when the Badgers come here down the road. That's going to do it for this week's GPL podcast. Obviously, we want to thank Todd Milewski for joining us on the podcast. We'll be back next week to recap the Badger series and preview the series with Notre Dame coming to town. For those of you currently watching on YouTube, stay tuned. We'll have a little bit of overtime coming up next. For the rest of you, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. All right.
I'm going to get my beverage. I'll be right back.
Yeah, this is where Viggs always goes.
Impatient.
Grabs his beer.
I'm good with water, thanks.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Boy, I really like that, Todd. He's like, those kids are like, bring it on.
And
I really like hearing that.
I didn't want to lead them into that, but they were like offering it. So I just already knowing that, this is one of those series that just has that natural level that's already there, and then you throw in that Gophers are 10-0, it ramps up a little bit. You throw in that the number 1 ramps it up a little bit more. You throw in that the Badgers kind of need something to get this second half going in the right direction instead of going down from the start. It's just it's all right there to mean something a little bit more this weekend, which is great.
Boy, I like it. All right, I'm gonna put you on full screen here, Viggs. Hold on, we'll pin you up there. There he is. He's pouring it. Oh, it's a Surly. Surly abrasive.
There you go.
And here comes the comments from Brent.
It would be nice if someone sponsored this specific segment. I'm flexible on beer. I like lots of different breweries around here. I'd like to keep it local if possible.
Oh boy.
A couple liquor stores, maybe, if they're interested.
That's good stuff.
Race was pretty darn good. Tough to beat for a local Imperial IPA, double IPA. So, yeah.
Wow.
So I think I was thinking about the last pair that was maybe as good as Ranta and Reedy. And you almost have to go back to like maybe Howla, Bugstad, like that era. Because I know like there's Kloos and Sheehy and Pitlick, and those guys were really talented and really good, but I don't think they were ever like play dominating guys. I think Kloos made his line mates like when Sheehy was a freshman and put up all those points, like they were really good, but that might be it. I don't know.
Boy, am I glad you mentioned Crowley. He is so much my guy, Todd. I will always praise him so much.
his name came into my head because I'm on this panel that's picking the I don't know if I should say this, but
The all WCHA teams?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the 90s was just what we voted on. And so that was, his name was prominent on my list is all I can say.
I would hope so, because I'm still bitter he left early. I keep thinking he stays his senior year. He's a 3-time All-American, and only one other person has done that at the U. His name is John Mariucci. Or is it Masich? One of the two. One of the two was a 3-time. Maybe Masich.
Masich.
Sorry.
Were you giving out All-Americans in Mariucci's era? I honestly don't know.
But Masich is that. I think they were. Sorry, I just had Mariucci in my head.
It's okay.
He would have been a 3-time All-American. I think he would have had the Hobie. I mean, he led the conference in points as a defenseman. That's he's my boy. He's always going to be my boy. It's just how it is. As us Jefferson boys, a program that's gone. Ooh, Happy, Patolny, Ehrman. That's a good combo.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And they also had Kessel on that team too.
Yeah. That was fun. It's fun to see all the old videos of Badger Gopher weekends past.
Oh, people are always posting that stuff. Obviously get the Kessel ear and the Ehrman penalty shot. And
we've gone through memory lane a couple times as a trio. It's always fun.
Oh. Yeah. I'll never forget the story I heard about the Ehrman penalty shot. I think I've told it on this on your guys' show here before that. Derek Shepard's the referee there, and I don't think he was really sure he got that call right on it, and so he says, "All right," he goes to Brookler and says, "Look, just stop it, all right." When he goes over to tell him, you're not supposed to leave, just stop the shot.
I don't think I've heard that.
I haven't heard it either.
That's what was told to me, third or fourth hand after the fact. So. Yeah, not a lot of happy people on the Badger side around after that game. I remember that.
Well, for one thing, you didn't see penalty shots back then,
right?
I mean, it wasn't common, and obviously we see them a lot more now. I think it's called more often now, and obviously we see them in shootouts and things like that. But I'll never forget Frank saying, the first penalty shot in forever. I mean, he's just like he hadn't remember seeing one. At least, for the Gophers. And I was at that. I was actually at that game as a fan.
I was at that fan game as well. I think that was after my ACL surgery.
Oh,
so I had some happy pills and was on crutches, and I was in the student section.
So that turned out real well for you, yeah.
It was because I had my surgery in I don't know, it was like late November or something like that. It was after I was done coaching high school football for the year, and I had surgery, and someone was like, "Yeah, you want to go in the student section for the Badger Gopher game?" I was like, "Why not? I got to bring my crutches though, and it might be awkward, but let's do it."
I see Mote. His favorite Minnesota-Wisconsin moment was, I'm thinking he must be saying Rasmussen's hit on Krug was like an explosion in the rink. Tim Krug. I don't know if you call him Krug, but I played youth soccer with Tim Krug when in 5th grade or 4th. I mean, I played with him actually a couple times because he played youth soccer as he was playing hockey. He wasn't obviously he was a Badger, but he didn't play a ton. But
yeah, I still am kind of upset that we got, no, cheated isn't the right word, but we didn't
say it, man. Say it. We cheated.
Well,
you were cheated.
It wasn't
overtime.
There was no cheating involved. It was that in 06, the Final Five championship game wasn't Badgers Gophers because they both lost in the semis. Because that was the year it should have been. Because that you had the Kessel thing earlier in the year.
Oh, that was that the St. Cloud game. Was that the St. Cloud game when St. Cloud and Minnesota went 8-7?
Well, or was that the
that was 2006.
Was that the guy that ran through the goal after the game? Was that one?
Tyler Hirsch.
Was that? No, that couldn't have been that one.
Because 05 is when there was that 8-7 Gopher St. Cloud game, and then they played each other the next night in the consolation. It was 4-0. It was a nothing game.
I swear that was 06 because that was the game that determined the 1 seed overall in the tournament. But
you know what?
Regardless,
I think he might be right. If it might have been 05, because wasn't that the Holy Cross year?
No, that was 06.
Oh, yeah. Then it was 06. 06 was the Holy Cross year, where because Minnesota lost that last seed thing, they would have played Bemidji State.
Right.
Instead, Bemidji played the Badgers in Green Bay, wasn't it?
Yes. I remember watching the Holy Cross game at a bar in Green Bay. That's like my frame of reference for that. It's like and of course, in Wisconsin, a bunch of Wisconsin fans, the place goes crazy. And I'm just sitting there like, all right, what did I just see? Are you serious? But yeah, I was just looking back at that. So the Badgers lost to North Dakota in the semis that year.
And Minnesota lost to St. Cloud 8-7.
Lost to yeah.
So they played each other the next day in a non-conference.
Yeah. The third place game,
but it still determined the overall number 1 seed when they played each other,
right?
For the pairwise.
So I mean,
but the only time a third place game really had huge ramifications.
Yeah, and they still haven't played each other for a championship since 90. I think that 90. WCHA championship game. And so that's one of those things that's like,
has it really been that long?
I don't remember one other than that.
I think you're right. Cause I remember I remember obviously them playing each other in the Final Five, but the championship,
they played that overtime game at the Bradley Center, but that was a semifinal.
Yeah. And that was the Checo game where he grabbed the puck in midair and went down the score. But because then I think Minnesota ended up playing Anchorage for the
Tech.
Tech.
No, they played Tech in the final that year. Yeah,
and it was like
it was
bad. It was like 10-1 or something like that. Or
90. Is that 97? No.
Yeah, it might have been around that year.
Because
Hirsch was when they lost 2-0 to CC.
97, the Frozen Four was in Milwaukee too, so I might be getting
we're getting old.
I was about to say the same thing.
We
don't remember stuff.
Google's great though.
Oh,
but I remember that 06 year, Lucia was frustrated with his team because they hadn't played on an NHL size rink for like 2 or 3 months or something like that. It was a year where they just played a lot of Olympic ice games, and then they just struggled at Excel for those 2 games in the Final Five, and then the Holy Cross thing happened, another NHL rink, and he's just like, that was a great team, but they were just not. They're not focused.
That could easily happen in the old days, though. If you finish a season with Anchorage or at CC, at St. Cloud, and then obviously Mariucci, I mean, and even Mankato at the time too.
Yeah, right.
Mankato was also an Olympic-sized rink at the time.
I was thinking about that in connection with this weekend. This is the first time since probably that Soldier Field game that Badgers Gophers hasn't been on an Olympic or near Olympic rink.
Because Cole is what, 98?
97.
97?
Yeah.
Close enough.
on
And
the dot?
97 and 0.2 inches.
I don't know. I do not know that. I've never been.
We're breaking out the
but
rangefinder next time we're there, and we're gonna.
I've wanted to so many times, just bring that a string or something and mark it off. But so the story behind that is that's as far as they could get when Jeff Sauer wanted to go Olympic at the Coliseum. That's as close as they could get to it because of just where the seats ended, and they would have had to knock out more rows of actual like permanent seats.
Those old coaches with obsession with Olympic ice. So
in those years, it was the way to go. But and so they made the practice rink at the Coliseum also that same width. So when the Kohl Center was being built, originally wasn't being built for hockey at all. It was just going to be for basketball because they had the Coliseum and they liked it there and they wanted to stay there. But
which is obvious once you see a game there.
Well, the Coliseum is if you're on that lower level, you're kind of looking like the guy in front of you.
Because I love, if you're in the first row of the upper deck at the Kohl Center, you are in a great position. If you're in the third row, you're not seeing the ice.
The second deck is perfect.
Sometimes you're not even seeing the goal.
Yeah, the second deck is perfect at the Kohl Center. I mean, and it which is where we sit.
Where the press area
box is. Yeah. But yeah, so the Coliseum, they made the arena that same width for the practice venue. Then when the Kohl Center opened, they decided that, well, since we're going to still be practicing at this other arena in the Coliseum complex, we need to match that width, which was still 97. So they made the Kohl Center, built that to 97, and have regretted it ever since. Well, not ever since, but in the last 10 years.
With the sight lines, they probably should have gone standard rink, because then you could have had it. You could have had those at least maybe not on the ends, 200 feet, but at least on the sides, you'd see the benches.
Yeah,
because if you're in the upper deck, you're not seeing the benches. You have to.
I'd learned. I don't know if it was the last time we were at Ohio State, but I think it was the year before. That Ohio State's rink is 100 wide, built to be 100 wide. But they just drilled new holes for it to make it 85 and brought in a couple extra rows. Because you can see in the corners, it's still frosted. Yeah. I mean, you can see where it goes, and the compressors still work there. So it's still, if there's any water on it, it freezes.
It's a hazard.
So I never knew that.
Here's an interesting thing about Milewski. Obviously, Milewski, 100 by 200. The corners are at a 28-foot diameter, which makes those corners
huge.
It makes them huge compared to, regular ice.
Right.
But obviously, sometime about 10 years ago, Lucia says, "Okay, we can't have this much room behind the net." He moved the red lines back a couple feet. When they did this, they had to change the alignment of one of the goals. Because where they would have had to drill the holes, there was literally pipes right underneath it. And we obviously don't want a pipe to burst. They've had that happen to Milewski in the past. So I believe one of the goals, it might even be the Zamboni goal, might be like over by like 2 inches or 3 inches to one side. So something, minuscule, doesn't matter when you're actually playing, but those little quirks, things you have to do when you make adjustments like that. You can't just drill a hole anywhere and redo it.
Is that the goal that always comes off too?
Now that's only when what's his face is playing goal for Ohio State. What's his name? What's the goalie?
Napier.
Napier. Yes.
Napier.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He slams into that post pretty hard.
I've seen that. I've only seen Badgers games there. Well, and a couple other, but I feel like I've seen that goal come off an awful lot, the Zamboni door goal. So I think maybe there's something quite
to
right
it
with the pegs.
Maybe it's not drilled far enough down.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen Craig Flora in almost a year now. So since we haven't been there since, what was it, late February or early March, I think is the last time I was there.
Yeah. Last time I saw him was at Blue Door Pub. Well, I think I have seen him. I saw him on campus once, but for hockey.
Yeah, but every arena's got their thing. Maybe Milewski goal is maybe off the side a little bit, and the old deck was 4 inches lower on one end than the other, where the ice is literally slanted at the old deck. I love that.
I love the old deck. That was a lot of fun.
I always
Reach
so,
up
the
and
thing
touch
is,
the ceiling
okay,
and the
here's the problem with the old deck. If you were in the main, I could get the upper deck, the main bowl, and the problem is you arrived at the game drunk. Those are steep stairs.
Mm.
It's a little scary. It could be. Oh, geez. I mean, your balance is already bad enough as it is. So the deck was a little scary.
I never felt great in that press box either. Because it's like just literally hanging from the rafters, and if I remember right, there was like a chicken wire thing out front of it to collect anything that would have, papers or cups or whatever, computers, people that fall out of the front of it, and that just never inspired a lot of confidence with me for whatever reason.
Have you been to ASU for their rink?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I've heard they have a similar press box setup where you're kind of like on an overhang,
Okay.
basically right over the benches. So you can hear the coaches and players.
Yeah, I mean
talking.
that's been like the rink at St. Norbert where I used to cover games back decades ago now. It feels like it. Well, it is. It was one of those where the press box is just like a loft above the benches and penalty boxes. So yeah, you can't really see anything that's going on there, but you can hear it. And the radio guy had to be quick on the
dump button,
the kill switch there to when the coaches really got going.
And some of the old rinks didn't even have press boxes.
Right.
I remember, Jeff Oftus, who still writes for us once in a while, and on GPL, one of our original writers, he actually he had a buddy who had worked for the airlines and could go up to Anchorage for no cost. So he went up there and covered the Gopher series once, and he said it was literally a table in the media in the concourse, not concourse, but with the walkway, and his table was right next to Wally and Glenn at the time.
Yeah.
And it's literally, and Mankato was like that for a while. It was just,
Mankato, that's what I was going to say.
It was tables.
The same way.
Yeah. And the thing is, I love the Mankato setup now because you're kind of up above, and you're where the first two or three rows of the old, the third deck, or third, it's really the second deck, but and I love sitting there and shooting from there now because you're up high enough. It's a bright arena. I don't have to move. It's the only thing is that it's not marble. What's that company makes the marble? Not the marble. They make the stone tops, the fake stuff. Cambria. They have Cambria on their countertops there in the ice arena, and it's freezing cold. If you don't have your battery plugged in on any device that's sitting on that, it's going to suck it dry because it's so cold.
Wow.
And who says we'll know if we'll ever see Mankato again, but all right, guys.
I've never been to Duluth. Duluth's new.
The new one.
Yeah, because when the Badgers were playing there in the WCHA, that was those years where I wasn't with the paper covering the team, so I never got to go up there. And so they were supposed to play that this year, so I was really looking forward to that. But
didn't they play that last year?
No, that was in Madison. They played Duluth last year.
Okay. That's right. You swept Duluth right off the beginning, defending national, two-time defending national. And that's why we're thinking Badgers are good. They start. Well,
I will, say this to as many people I can tell it to. There was a series at Notre Dame against Notre Dame in November where they won the first game, went to overtime in the second game. Caulfield had a breakaway. It got through Cale Morris's pads and was rolling and stopped an inch short of the goal line, and they swept it away. 20 seconds later, Notre Dame scores at the other end. So, it's the old days where it counts for nothing. Then you get nothing out of that for losing in overtime. And I really think if they win that game and sweep the series against Notre Dame, that was one of those moments where it goes in one direction or another. That was where it was for the Badgers last year. So that's my argument I'm sure others would disagree that they were always trending downward, but that for me was, and then they got swept at Michigan State to close the first half, not the next weekend, but the weekend after, I think. And so that was like, for me,
maybe next year.
Yeah. Right.
Winning helps everybody stay engaged and on track, and you drop a couple and you just start seeing different scenarios at the end. Makes a difference.
And Granado talked about it too, that he felt like last year because they had 4 guys go to the World Juniors last year. And he felt like that those guys were already kind of, he didn't use the words checked out, but that for those couple weeks before the end of the first half, they had that on their minds an awful lot. And he thought it was different this year with Caulfield and Holloway. So.
Well, I think those guys have more ownership now than they did last year.
I think it's true, yeah.
And I think when you have like an identity with your program rather than trying to integrate into like an abyss of leadership, it's just different. We'll see, though.
Right.
A lot of hockey ahead, hopefully.
Maybe. I hope so, too.
Right.
I hope so, too. Because
don't take anything for granted here. But
I know.
Yeah. I didn't send in my story on the advancing the Badgers women's series until I saw Ohio State's plane was in the air, because I've been burned on that a couple times already, where I had a story ready to go and written and everything, and then so
what can you do? There's nothing you can do.
Right.
It's just
and there's still, they could still test tomorrow morning and say, oh no, we're not going to play. But I had to at least get through today, and that was the best indication I was going to get that everything was okay for today. So crazy days.
Yeah, I'm not sure the women's season's going to survive. As the men have been doing okay so far, but the thing is, that's the difference. The men are in the Big Ten, a little more stringent with the testing.
Well, I think they're more focused too. Like they've got pro potential stuff at risk.
Yeah,
and I think any athlete wants to play, and I'm glad that as many athletes are getting to play as women's hockey and volleyball and gymnastics and wrestling and all that stuff. But like, I just think the focus right now is so much stronger with the sports with the pro development stuff.
There was an interesting study out today or yesterday about that rapid testing that the Big Ten is using, that basically when you're asymptomatic, it missed 57% of the positive cases. So you had a better shot of flipping a coin to tell whether you had COVID than potentially that test was, which doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in what they're using to determine things here. But
I mean, my perspective, thank God this is overtime, is that testing is not a metal detector. You're not going to catch all the cases. What it's going to do is it's going to allow you to maybe potentially contain an outbreak before it spreads to your whole team. If you get a couple of asymptomatic people who don't test positive, maybe they're not as infectious. I think that's kind of been up in the air. If you're not symptomatic, maybe you're less infectious. So if people are distancing and wearing masks and not going out, the idea of them infecting other people is less.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean,
football showed
too. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just going to say. Both Wisconsin and Minnesota football is like, once it's going, it's going.
Yeah.
So tough to at that point.
You need like a 14-day shutdown to stop it when it happens, where you have like 10 plus kids or staff testing. So I think with hockey too, we've also heard there's been more than a handful of Gophers who caught it earlier in the year. So maybe they're in the clear for the rest of the season. We'll see.
Or even the summer.
Yeah,
Moscow said he had it in summer.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying, is a lot of them caught it during the summer.
That was the same way. I think it was a half dozen with the Badgers had it over the summer. And so it's almost a quarter of your roster. So that, who knows?
Right. And you have a lot of hockey players living together and stuff. So
they're
going to spread it. And
Well, and that was the thing with at the end of the first half that one of the Badgers players had it, and they had to quarantine his other three roommates because hockey players live together, and so the rules were the rules, and they couldn't get those quarantine guys back until they eventually changed the rules, but it was supposed to be 14 days, I think, or I can't remember. I think it was 14 days at that point. So they were out, couldn't do anything about it.
Do you guys worry about the junior kids rolling the dice here coming into this weekend with their teams based on what they're doing?
Well, it was interesting to me that Los Angeles sent, and a few other teams sent charters to go get their players and bring them back so they wouldn't have to go through commercial flight, and in theory then wouldn't have to quarantine as long when they got back to camp. But I read today that they're gonna have to be out for 7 or 8 days anyway, which so those guys are flying commercial or flying charter and still quarantining. Meanwhile, these guys are flying through commercial, probably through a couple different airports. I believe the Wisconsin guys had to stay overnight in Denver last night.
Oh, geez.
Because something got canceled or delayed or whatever. So now you're entering another environment, and they're coming in and off you go.
And I don't know how they celebrated, but I could imagine being a 20-something kid who just won a gold medal over Canada. Probably
want to celebrate with their buddies. That's just what you do.
Want to celebrate, and
with
then
an 18-year-old drinking age in Alberta.
Yeah, and then I know that the Gopher team met the players right away when they came back. Mm-hmm. So it's not like there was a come back, go to your dorm room or go to apartment or whatever in quarantine. So I don't think it's possible. I would only do this on overtime, but they are just opening up their teams to risk here at some point.
And I don't know what's right or what's wrong. I only know what people say, and you hope you're trusting the right medical advice and people who have the right priorities, but
they're rolling the dice. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, and people with the right intents can still disagree about things. I think we see not just in this, in everything, right? So it's hard to know what the right thing is, and do we really know what the right thing is until maybe months or years down the road? Don't know.
I mean, I'm not convinced that it's going to be back to normal next October either. I mean, I don't think
I'm not convinced of anything anymore. let's put it there, but that's fair, I think.
It's fair to think normalcy's in jeopardy for a while. So I'm just hoping for summer camps for my kids. My kids are supposed to go back to school on Monday for some in-person stuff. Yeah. So hopefully
knock on wood there.
Yeah.
Madison is announcing tomorrow morning what their plan is for second semester of public schools. So, and my wife's a teacher, so we're all a little
on edge, I'd imagine.
Damn snotty kids. Gonna make you sick.
It's, you don't know with anything, right? I mean, you can go to the grocery store, touch something someone else has touched, and off it goes. But I just don't know. I have so many conflicting feelings and thoughts about it that it's I don't even know where to go with anything. I just don't want.
Well, here is the positive.
Kind of trouble.
The positive of COVID, we're washing our hands a lot more. We're wearing masks everywhere. The regular flu this year is almost non-existent. People aren't getting the common cold as much because of their behavior, wearing a mask, washing your hands. Because obviously those aren't as transmissible as COVID. But because what we've done because of COVID, it's brought the common cold down, and the regular flu for this year has come down quite a bit. That's my 2 cents.
Is your medical segment brought to you by anyone in particular tonight? Or?
Still looking for a sponsor for that too.
Sponsor for that too?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'll let you know if I see anyone.
Yeti cups. I don't know.
There you go.
Yeti coolers, perfect for shipping your coronavirus vaccine.
There you go.
The thing is, I don't know if we could sponsor this part, because this is the part that only the live people get to hear.
We'd like to keep it small, so maybe we'll start doing Patreon type stuff.
Don't tempt me. That would piss them off. People like free. Go mortgage.
You're
Go
talking
mortgage
to a guy in the newspaper business. Yeah, we recognize that people like things that are free.
You think?
I know, it's so rough. I'll be writing again sometime, maybe somewhere.
Well, you might be, because Mr. Boss is going to be going back to the Wild after he covered the Gophers for like a week.
Yeah, maybe if the Gophers keep going. Well, I mean, I give Russo a pass. I mean, he had some major stuff going on, and
Yeah. And I do think, people talk about the Gopher broadcast and LaPanta calling the games. I don't think he's going to be calling the games very long. It's going to be right back with the Wild.
Yeah.
And we're going to see.
Although I will say, because they can't call the road games in person for either college or the NHL, maybe they'll stick with them, because I know Charlie wasn't sure he was going to get any games this year at all.
Which is a shame, because they're going to use LaPanta because he's a full-time employee.
Yeah, he's already been paid.
It makes sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to bring in Charlie, for game. I mean, they might bring him in when they need him, because. But
there's got to be some crossovers, right? Where
there probably is. I see some of those 4 p.m. games. I haven't even looked. I'm sure there's some others. Sometimes they're on, FSN Plus.
Yeah, right.
Things like that.
Charlie did a great job last year, though. I
like Charlie.
Really, really solid.
We were on board with him because, I'm glad they decided, hey, let's go clean slate. Let's go young. Let's kind of start over. Because, ever since they got rid of Frank, it's been kind of a debacle. Anthony for 2 years. You bring back a guy who's quite a bit past his prime.
Lost his fastball.
Metallurgy save.
Going to the changeup too often.
Yeah.
Needed a little more Vaseline on the.
Give that man a $5 cigar. I'm like, really, dude? But yeah, it was time for them to move on, start fresh, and I think Charlie's is in a great spot. This is just a bad year. That's
a bad year.
Mm-hmm.
Just a bad year.
How's your paper holding up, Todd?
It's a bad year.
Hey, I will say this though. A couple of days a week, we have four full pages of advertising from the same hearing aid sponsor.
What?
Right. We laugh about this at our table because I'm reading this and it's, you open it and the font is like, it's half the page that the text is.
So they're blind too?
Well, that's the thing. Why do we need to? Is it shouting? Is that like a actual thing?
That's
when
a lot of ink.
That big? I don't. Is this why they have to take out 4 pages a couple times a week? But I understand why hearing aids cost so much now, because they pay so much for marketing. I mean, my goodness.
Hey, if you're selling large ads, more power to you.
That's exactly, yeah.
I mean, because
I hope that's bringing in some cash.
Because the newspaper industry, I love following the newspapers. They did hurt themselves when they didn't get on the digital bandwagon for advertising. They could have been your local, Craigslist.
Well, right, and
I mean, that's you mean, because I sold stuff to the newspaper back in the day.
Yeah.
They could have been, they could have been Craigslist back in the late 90s or something like that when things started going online.
Yeah.
And I think they could have kept a lot of that revenue.
Sure. The bad ideas started with hey, let's just put everything we have out there and people will come to us, and maybe we'll get around to charging them at some point.
Yep, that's a great point as well.
The idea that, and it's just, out there now that people are used to not paying for things online. Turning that dial is almost impossible in a lot of ways. So, yeah, it goes back to a lot of bad decisions 20 years ago that,
and obviously other decisions too are letting, hedge funds, whatever, buying newspapers. Yeah. And it's just like, you're putting people in control who have no idea what they're doing. They're just,
or they know exactly what they're doing.
Oh yeah. That's the problem. But they cut just to make money. And then your product turns to shit. That's just how it is.
Or there's the people who are buying media companies to project certain thoughts and ideals. That's happening too.
Yeah. I think the way we've looked at it is that we need to be really good at the things we do well that people will come to us for because they're not done well other places. So you can get your national political coverage anywhere, right? We've got to hit Wisconsin politics. We've got to hit the Badgers. We've got to do those things really well and build an audience around that. And that will be willing to pay for it and tell their friends that they should be willing to pay for it too. And do a lot of that work that we used to have to do ourselves in marketing for us. Now, I mean, can you do that? That's not really easy. When there's, 4 or 5 different websites that try to cover, the big sports, the football and basketball, the stuff that gets a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. And then there's little old me trying to cover a couple of hockey teams and a few other sports that get seasonal attention, I guess. I
like the soccer coverage.
Yeah,
I do as well. Yes,
I do actually like doing that. It's a fun team to cover too, just from all the wackiness that they bring. Like they just they adopted a cow last year, and the cow just had a baby, and so they have a naming contest for the baby. The cow was named Leonella Bessie. Based on Lionel Messi. Yeah, right.
I got it.
That, and so now it's baby there, her baby they're looking to name again, and so yeah, it's little stuff like that. I mean, on the field they've been, but and especially this year they had to play 70 miles away because they can't play here in town. Mm-hmm. Dane County shut everything down, so. And they don't know whether they can play here next year, or later this year, next season. But yeah,
I couldn't imagine how fun a Loons game would have been this year, Viggs, with how they played. I want to get up there, Viggs. I want to see that new stadium. I want to go to a game. This year would have been off the charts.
Yeah, I mean, we're missing out with the Loons. Now the Gopher hockey team, the Gopher basketball team's been playing pretty well lately. Mm-hmm. Ricky Rubio's back with his tremendous hair and eyebrows. I mean, we got a lot of good stuff going.
I've got to get to Mariucci at least one time this year, Viggs.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping I can be in that vaccine train that will hit eventually. And you can just, if you're diligent, you'll be able to get it quickly. And then I'll have less concern about doing it. Just because
I have a physician's assistant friend who just got her second dose today.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. It's coming. I mean, I'm coaching youth hockey, so I'm around a lot of kids. So I'm getting exposed there now again. And, my kids are in school in person, so I'm exposed there. And, it's just complicated decision-making. I don't do much.
Did Minnesota just open something back up in the last couple of days?
Youth hockey on Monday opened up.
Restaurants went to 50% on Monday as well.
Yeah.
I wish it was this weekend. I would literally wish I'm going down to Wabasha. I'm going to see if I can find, big place for all the bald eagles. Going down to this weekend, it would have been great to hit up one of their small little cafes and
get a little takeout, Connor. You can do it. It's okay. I picked up Blue Door a couple times and eaten it in the car. Fries don't travel well.
They do not.
No, so you just pick them up, eat them in the car. It's good.
I may have to do that. Yeah.
I can do that for another 3 months if we can get out of this. So, but yeah,
good.
Going to the rink without a hockey bag with a mini mite and a mite is interesting when you're coaching too.
Yeah.
So I've got my stick with 3 pairs of skates on it, and my kids have got their helmets and gloves on already, and
because they're not using the locker rooms at all.
No locker rooms and no bags, and all the players and coaches have to wear masks. So I'm in favor of all this stuff except for the bag thing. The bag thing is like, can we just encourage people to get?
How did the goalie kids do? The
goalies are an exception. Goalies can have bags.
That's good because, man, I can't imagine a kid trying to walk in with all this gear on.
Yeah.
But like certain arenas, like I'm sure it's fine. But the ones we play in, we play at Northeast in Augsburg, which are these tiny arenas with no concourse space. So it's almost more crowded with more people intermixing when you put these blanket things in. And I know that, your local Augsburg ice arena manager is not an epidemiologist and knows the proper plan to put in place. But like when you're taking away 2/3 of your square footage to get dressed and putting it into 1/3, maybe not the best idea. But I don't know. We get in, we get out. Kids had fun. I feel like the kids are more engaged this year than they have been in the past just because they're so desperate for something to do.
Oh boy.
There's not as much repeating what the drill is or separating kids or saying kids.
You know what? The kids are learning what it was like when we were young. You actually have to make your own fun.
Some kids are. There's a lot of electronics now. So
yeah. Well,
Connor, no small kids in your house.
My oldest daughter turns 20 tomorrow.
That's fast.
Oh, yeah. There's a reason why I've got this. At least I've got my hair, but man, is it white. Ooh. Oh boy. All right, guys.
I've got distance learning tomorrow. Thanks for doing this. It was fun.
Thanks, Todd. It's always fun to have you on. That was some extended overtime. I like that. It was good.
Yeah, no kidding.
Triple OT.
Triple OT. All right, thanks, guys.
All right, we'll catch you later.
See you next week, Riggs.